Deep in the Vermont wilderness lies a place of ancient curses and modern mysteries. A scenic landscape where people have vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and the eerie legend of the Bennington Triangle. Nestled into the southwestern region of Vermont lies an expanse of wilderness stretching approximately 100 square miles. Thick with forest and natural wonders including the Glastonbury Mountain, this region, roughly bordered by the towns of Glastonbury, Woodford, and Bennington, has deep-rooted history including the first town created in Vermont and significant chapters in the American Revolution. It is scenic, it is historic, and to many it's also terrifying. The chilling stories of Glastonbury Mountain began centuries ago when the Native American population regarded the space as sacred, but also cursed. Being the place where the four winds meet, they used the area only for the burial of their dead and warned people not to travel the region. They also told the tale of a large and malicious stone that would swallow up anyone who stood on it. If a curse placed by nature, a revered but feared burial ground, and a rock that could consume a human was not enough, there were also the tales of the wild men, large hairy human-like creatures that roamed the dense woods alongside other beasts. These tales were known, but in the decades after the Civil War, the old warnings faded and people now living in the region looked to transform their town. In 1872, the town began its first metamorphosis, becoming a logging community fed by the ample and seemingly endless supply of lumber surrounding them. A train line was built extending 9 miles to Bennington, and 3 coal kilns supplied coal that would be shipped down the mountain on the rails. The operations were a success, and by 1880, the little town had a school, post office, and a population of 241 people. It looked promising, but in the 1890s a black cloud seemed to take a firm residency over the region. The first strike came on April 4, 1892, when Glastonbury residents Henry McDowell and John Crowley had a confrontation. It is unknown what words were exchanged, but McDowell felt they were strong enough to warrant grabbing a rock and bludgeoning Crowley to death before escaping into the woods. He was eventually caught in Connecticut, convicted, and sent to Waterbury State Hospital. After some time, though, the guards felt he could be trusted to spend some time out in the yard. Once outside, he saw his moment and hid in a coal cart before making his escape. He was never seen again. 5 years later, in October 1897, John Harbor of nearby Woodford was found dead, killed by a single gunshot wound. His killer was never found. It was in that same year that Glastonbury came face to face with a big problem. They were a lumber town, but they were running out of trees to cut. Given that they already had cleared land, created pathways, and had a number of silent buildings from the now extinct lumber industry, they decided to take an entirely different turn and transform the area into a resort town with a trolley, hotel, and casino. The hopes were high, but after one season, the dreams were decimated when massive flooding ravaged the town. With no trees or root systems to help alleviate the impact of the water, it ran over with nothing in its path, destroying the railways leading to the resort that was going to save the town. The flood was the death blow to Glastonbury, and with seemingly no other option, the residents moved on, leaving the town nearly abandoned with less than 10 residents remaining. This low population was one of the reasons that in 1937, the town was disincorporated, putting it in place to officially become a ghost town. The region sat quietly while the wilderness reclaimed it, largely remaining out of the public eye until November 12, 1945, when it became the focus of search parties and newspaper headlines. The man they were searching for was Mitty Rivers, an outdoorsman who had become closely acquainted with these woods in his almost 75 years. An avid hunter and fisherman, Rivers was spending the day hunting with a small party including his son-in-law. While the group was stopped near Bickford Hollow, Rivers decided to move ahead of the party. By the time the clock struck 4 p.m., he had not returned, and the concerned hunting party went out to find him. When the group saw no sign of Rivers, they traveled down to Bennington and asked Fire Chief Wallace Madison to help them search. The search went on for days and grew to include hundreds of people and soldiers from Fort Devens in Massachusetts. Hours marched on, the sun rose and set multiple times, and the hope that Rivers was fine out in the woods, that he knew so well, and that he would just show back up one day, quickly faded when the snow began to fall. Rivers was never found, and the only thing ever recovered was a single rifle cartridge from his gun. The tragic disappearance of Mitty Rivers might have slipped away into time, but instead, it unfortunately became the first one. In December 1946, 18-year-old Paula Jean Weldon was a sophomore at Bennington College, where she studied art, had an interest in botany, and worked at the college cafeteria. After her shift on December 1st, she told her roommate she was going to do some hiking on the Long Trail, a 272-mile footpath that follows Vermont's Green Mountains up to the border of Canada. She was dressed in sneakers, blue jeans, and a red parka, clothing that was fine for that afternoon, but would offer no protection for the kind of cold that settled in after dark. She left just before 3 p.m., and she was seen several times that afternoon. One owner of a gas station claims he saw a woman matching her description near a gravel pit. She began hitchhiking and was picked up by a local contractor, who took her as far as his house, which was about 2.5 miles from the beginning of the Long Trail. Once she began walking on the trail, she encountered a group of hikers who answered some questions she had before they moved on in the opposite direction of Weldon. According to some reports, a local man named Ernest Whitman may have had one of the last encounters with Weldon when she stopped to speak to him at his cabin. She asked how long she could go on the trail, and he informed her it was 4 miles to a fork. He warned her that she was not dressed for the weather, but she went on her way anyway. When Weldon's roommate didn't see her return that night, she was not worried. She assumed she was just in another part of the college or in the library studying late. But when she realized the next morning that Weldon was still gone, she went to the faculty. The president of the college called her parents in Connecticut and asked if their daughter was home with them. She was not. And when Weldon's mother was informed her daughter was also not at school, she fainted on the spot. The search for Paula Weldon had one huge roadblock from the start: the structure of the search itself. At the time of her disappearance, Vermont did not have its own state police force, so the search was assembled and conducted by the president of Bennington College and Weldon's father. A group of 370 students and faculty went out to search for her, splitting into groups and throwing confetti on areas that were already searched so other groups knew that that area had already been looked at. In time, both the Connecticut and New York State Police were brought in to assist, and a reward of $5,000 was offered. It was no use. No trace of Paula Weldon was ever found. It is easy to say that both Mitty Rivers and Paula Weldon were probably unfortunate victims of the elements in the wooded expanse that includes Bennington and Glastonbury, but the story of James Tedford is much more difficult to explain away. It was late into 1949, and James Tedford was supposed to be back home, but he was not. The 68-year-old World War II veteran had been spending some time visiting his wife and family in Franklin, Vermont, before boarding a bus in St. Albans to return back home to the Vermont Soldiers' Home where he lived in Bennington. Along the way back, there was a stop in Burlington where Tedford ran into an old friend, and the pair chatted a bit before he once again boarded the bus on the final stretch of his ride home. When the bus stopped back in Bennington, it was discovered that the veteran was nowhere to be found. His last known whereabouts was on the bus on December 1st, at approximately 4 p.m., almost exactly 3 years after the last known sighting of Paula Weldon in the same region. There was no question that Tedford boarded the bus. Not only was he seen getting back on, but his suitcase, unfolded map, and unchecked bus ticket were still sitting on his seat. He was simply gone. Shockingly, it took days for anyone to put the pieces together that Tedford never returned home, and a search for the man did not take place for over a week after he was last seen. No trace of James Tedford was ever found. With the number of mysterious occurrences in the Glastonbury-Bennington region, there are bound to be theories about what happened to the missing. There are purely logical ones. Langer may have had a seizure and drowned. The young Paul Jepson or Paula Weldon may have been kidnapped. James Tedford may have decided he no longer wanted to live at the Vermont soldiers' home and silently left the bus with no one noticing. One of more of the missing may have simply succumbed to the ruthless wilderness and elements. There are these theories, and there are others that believe that there is something very abnormal going on in the woods of southwestern Vermont. The stories go back to the Native American tales of the land being cursed and a human swallowing rock. But there was something else they spoke of, that being the wild men of the woods. The idea of large, hairy creatures roaming the woods is easy to dismiss as Native American legend, but there is an account of many others seeing a similar creature in the late 1800s. According to the story, a stagecoach full of people were traveling through the mountains near Glastonbury during a torrential downpour that made progress nearly impossible. The stagecoach driver came to a halt, and when he climbed down with lantern in hand, he noticed a large set of footprints in the mud in front of them. The tale continues that people started to come out of the stagecoach to look at the footprints when the horses began to get extremely restless. Then something hit the stagecoach with tremendous force, and everyone inside scrambled out. According to their accounts, whatever was hitting the coach finally hit it with a blow strong enough to knock it on its side, and through the pelting rain, they saw a massive human shape covered with hair, and two huge eyes in the darkness that turned and ran back into the woods. The creature, dubbed the Bennington Monster, became yet another mystery of the region, but it was looked at a little stronger in November 1943. Before the first disappearance of Mitty Fisher in November 1945, there was the story of Carol Herrick. Herrick was also an outdoorsman and an avid hunter who went out hunting one day with his cousin Henry. Allegedly, the two men got separated and Henry contacted authorities to try and find his cousin. Carol Herrick was found days later laying near his gun that had not been fired. The cause of death was equally confusing and disturbing. It was said that his lungs were punctured by his ribs, and it appeared that he had been squeezed to death. Since its earliest days, the forests of southwestern Vermont have been surrounded by unsettling stories. The Native American tales of the land being cursed, man-eating rocks, and wild men live in the collective memory alongside tales of beasts attacking stagecoaches, inexplicable sounds coming from the woods, and even reports of mysterious lights and flying objects being seen over the treetops. It is the disappearances, though, that earned the region the name the Bennington Triangle, coined by author Joseph Citro in 1992. When it comes to the Bennington Triangle, the years between 1945 and 1950 will forever be synonymous with the disappearances of Mitty Rivers, Paula Weldon, James Tedford, Paul Jepson, Frida Langer, and Martha Jeanette Jones. But these names reflect only a small sliver of the strange occurrences in the woods. The terrifying truth is that we may never fully know the extent of the unexplained that already has and continues to unfold in the region of the Bennington Triangle of Vermont. Some places hold secrets that nature refuses to give up. The Bennington Triangle remains one of America's most enduring and chilling enigmas.